Hey everyone, welcome to the Where Are You Going and Where Have You Been analysis lecture by Joyce Carol Oates. Presented to you by this guy, J.B. Byers. I will be going through this analysis. If you have not read the story yet, I suggest stopping this wonderful analysis video, going to the story, reading it, and then come back and watch the rest of it. Okay? You'll get a lot more out of it if you have read the story. Okay. Here we go. We're going to go through this story for Unit 1. This PowerPoint is available online on Blackboard, posted as a PDF. Okay, so you can follow along with that too as well and refer back to this without having to watch the lecture. Here we go. Where the hell are you going and where the hell have you been? So let's begin with the fact that there is a literal understanding of the ending. Okay, the story functions on multiple different levels. Okay, but one of those is an actual ending. Okay, there's no doubt Connie is abducted by Arnold's friend, and she will be eventually murdered. Okay. The author, Joyce Carol Oates, read a newspaper story about a teenage girl that was raped and murdered in a field. The victim was home alone during the day while her parents were at a barbecue. There was no evidence of forced entry. So this is exactly like the story where Connie's parents and her frumpy sister go to a barbecue. It's a Sunday. It's during the day. And Arnold's friend gets her to come out of her house and go with him. And so Joyce, she changes the character's name, and she imagines what was the final 24 hours of this girl's life was like. Okay. And so she writes this story. Let's talk about the symbolism. Connie. Connie clearly represents youth. She is young. If you've already watched the Hills Like White Elephants story analysis, or you're about to, this Connie correlates to Jig. I imagine Jig and Connie are the same age, but different times. Connie is your suburban youth, who she's a teenager, but she's still living with her parents. Versus Jig was a teenager, but she was considered a woman back because her story takes place like over 40 years earlier than Connie's story. So even though they're about the same age, of course, they're seen differently in society, but they still represent the same thing. This like youthfulness of a woman, a girl who is no longer a girl. She's a woman by all physical accounts, but her brain is not fully developed yet. She's not fully out of the adolescent age either. Okay, so she's not really also a woman. She's a this teenage adolescent female who might look like a woman, but she does not have the actual maturity or brain function as a woman yet. She's still underage, adolescent. She kind of represents this idea of every girl. Like she is just your typical, she represents like, everyone, all of her peers in one. This is kind of a callback to this character referred to as Everyman, who existed in these morality plays back during when the Dark Ages and the 1200s and the 1000s, pre-Renaissance, the Middle Era. This is when the church had outlawed plays, but theater, except for morality plays, which was a kind of a play / drama that always starred a character named Everyman that taught a lesson about good conduct and character by showing a character making bad decisions. Everyman would always make poor decisions and he would be punished in the end. And so the idea is that you learn that you're Everyman, but you don't want the same ending that he got, so you need to learn the lesson and change your behavior. The everyman character always ended up failing in the end, which was supposed to teach the audience how not to behave. Okay. So, like, for example, if you are lazy, this bad thing will happen. If you are greedy, this bad thing will happen. And if you're any which way, something bad's going to happen to you. So we have Arnold Friend. Let's talk about Arnold Friend. You have this quote: "He slid out just as carefully, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He had shaggy, shabby black hair that looked crazy as a wig. He was lean, and a white pullover shirt that was a little soiled and showed the hard, small muscles of his arms and shoulders. He looked as if he probably did hard work, lifting and carrying things. Even his neck looked muscular. He almost fell, but like a clever, drunken man, he managed to catch his balance. He wobbled in his high boots and grabbed hold of one of the porch posts." These are all different quotes throughout the story. "One of his boots was at a strange angle, as if his foot wasn't in it. It pointed out to the left, bent at the ankle. What? What is wrong with this guy? This is crazy. Slippery little friendly smile of his, that sleepy, dreamy smile that all the boys used to get across ideas they didn't want to put into words. Dirty. These are thoughts of sex. Okay, these are sexualized thoughts that he's thinking. The transistor radio played the same program that was playing inside of the house. How is that? She was listening to something, and then he was listening to the same thing. How did he know? These are all things, these are all lines from the story that are supposed to make us suspicious of Arnold Friend. That's because Arnold Friend is a satyr. What? This is a satyr right here. I'm gonna get rid of my picture. Okay. He's a satyr. He's a mythological creature. That's what he symbolizes. He slid out just as carefully, planting his feet firmly on the ground. Okay, that's like his legs. All right, because his legs are all wobbly. One of his boots was at a strange ankle. Okay, because he has a goat legs. He has goat legs. He has shaggy, shabby black hair that looked crazy as a wig. It was a wig because it was covering up his horns. He was lean and he had muscles. Okay, I mean, look at those guys. Look at his abs, man. Satyr doing some major crunches there. He had a slippery, friendly smile of his, that sleepily dream smile. Okay, about dirty thoughts. That goes back to his horns. We get the term horny from the satyr, because the satyr is always associated with sex and promiscuity. And so he's motivated by that. And so his horns represent that, because Arnold Friend is horny. The transistor radio played the same program that was playing inside. Okay, well, satyrs always come with music. They're always associated with music as well, because music is a great way to seduce people. So in Greek mythology, a satyr is a male nature spirit, characterized by their perverted and sexual jokes. They love making their little sex jokes. They love wine, music, dancing, and women, and they use wine, music, and dancing to seduce women. They often attempted to seduce or rape mortal women. Some satyrs are seen more as like sly. They are not generally the type of rapist where you imagine, where it's a dark alley and they use a knife and they are beating a woman. They're more like the date rapers. The satyr is the person who's manipulative, who is trying to score without being so violent. Okay, but it's still dishonest. It's still not good. It's still immoral. It's still damaging to women, and it's still deceitful. It's awful. And so, but they might use alcohol, drinks, liquor, roofies. They might, just use their words to make a thing to convince a girl that they're really into her and that they're looking for a relationship and all these things, in order for a girl to put down her her boundaries, and then after she sleeps with him, he leaves. He's gone. Okay, that's pulling a satyr. So let's, classic example. We have the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay, Mr. Tumnus, he's a good example. I mean, he doesn't have sex with Lucy, thank God, because she's a child, and this is a kid's story. But it is C.S. Lewis modifies him to fit a child story. He tricks Lucy to come back to his house. He drugs her and then betrays her. Now, if this was a adult story, he would have drugged her and then slept with her while she's unconscious or totally loopy. But instead, he portrays her by notifying the White Witch that she is there. Okay, but he still lured her in over using duplicit means, and then purposefully gets her to fall asleep. Okay, he's a satyr. So that's the symbolic meaning of Arnold Friend. Let's look more at a literal meaning. The literal meaning is that, like, look, he's a male predator. He's a male predator. He is the way that she sees through him to see the satyr. That's her intuition. If you watched the Hills Like White Elephants lecture, or if you're going to next, you'll hear me reference this. Women's intuition. It gets them. They can see things and know things. They just do. And so for her, Connie, she sees his predatory spirit, that satyr within him, that, like, he can't be trusted. He is just trying to get her sexually and to cause violence or harm to her, whether that's emotional harm or physical harm. He's a male predator. He says, "Yes, I'm your lover. You don't know what that is, but you will," he said. "I know that too. I know all about you. But look, it's real nice, and you couldn't ask for anybody better than me, or more polite. I always keep my word. I'll tell you how it is. I'm always nice at first, the first time. I'll hold you so tight you won't think you have to try to get away or pretend anything, because you'll know you can't. And I'll come inside you where it's all secret, and you'll give in to me, and you'll love me." I mean, he is showing his cards. That is what male predators do. Okay. But then we can also look at the symbolic meaning of Arnold Friend. He's the patriarchy. He is the societal structure of how men dominate all sectors of our lives. Whether that is in the household, that's the church, that is business, that is the government, that's even like in controlling education. Connie's sexuality, okay, she's a sexually active teenager in this story. That gives her a sense of power and through the use of consent. Okay, this story does not, let's see here, this story does not villainize Connie just because she is sexually active. Okay, sex is used against her. She has every right to be sexually active. And the one that's in the wrong is Arnold for using sex against her. If sex is the purest and most pleasurable physical sensation the body can experience, then its emotional counterpart is the mind's experience with absolute free will. Sexuality in literature is not always about sex. Sometimes it is. Like if you read Cat Person, the sex is sex. But like in this kind of story, sex is a physical representation of power and the power of making one's own choices. Free will. Free will is, it's hard, you can't, it's not tangible. You can't, as someone watching something or reading a book, you can't see free will, but you can see sex. And so it's a symbol of pleasure. And the most pleasurable thing someone can also have is the ability to have freedom and to make their own choices and to have autonomy. So we get Connie's activity in the story, but it also represents, though, her individual choices. Look, Prior to her encounter with Arnold's friend, we see a night that she goes out where she chooses a partner. One night in midsummer, they ran across, breathless with daring, and right away, someone leaned out a car window and invited the girls over. Connie's with one of her best friends. But it was just a boy from high school that they didn't like. It made them feel good to be able to ignore him. So this guy called out. He's like, "What's up, girl?" And she was like, Connie looked at him. She was like, "No, I don't want to. I could go over to him and talk to him and get in the back seat of his car. And the back seat is always symbolic of hanky panky. But she chooses not to. And when she chooses not to, he's like, okay, because he never comes back up in the story. He doesn't pursue her. She drew her shoulders up and sucked in her breath with the pure pleasure of being alive. Her ability to make her own choices gave her the purest pleasure of being alive. It's her ability to say yay or nay. The boy calling out to her, she said no, and it made her feel good to be able to make her own decisions. A boy named Eddie came in to talk with them. He sat backwards on his stool, turning himself jerkily around in semicircles, and then stopping and turning back again. And after a while, he asked Connie if she would, like to go. And she said yes. She said yes. She's like, I would like to go out with you. Okay. And so she spent 3 hours with him at the restaurant where they ate hamburgers and drank Cokes and wax cups that were always sweating, and then down an alley a mile or so away. People go in the alley in a car to go make out or have sex. Okay. So she chose to go with him. She was confronted by the one boy. She said no. Mm-mm. But then this guy, she said yes. I want to go with you. And so she chose. And when he left her off at 5 to 11, only the movie house was still open at the plaza. Her girlfriend was there talking with a boy. When Connie came up, the two girls smiled at each other, and Connie said, "How was the movie?" And the girl said, "You should know." In this case, the movie is sex. It's like an inside joke. They told their parents they're going to a movie, but they knew they weren't going to a movie. They were going to go hook up with other people. The movie. The next morning, June asked her how the movie was, and Connie said, so-so, so-so. Her time spent with Eddie wasn't about the sex, the movie. It was about the power to make her own decisions. Eddie, this young kid, he probably didn't give her any real pleasure, all right? But like here, it says, she drew her shoulders up and sucked in her breath with the pure pleasure of being alive. Her ability to choose her partner is her power, okay? Her power of consent and choice, okay? And so Connie sat with her eyes closed in the sun later that day, dreaming and dazed with a warmth about her, as if this were a kind of love, the caresses of love, sex. And her mind slipped over onto the thoughts of the boy she had been with the night before, and how nice he had been, how sweet it always was. Not the way someone like June would suppose, but sweet, gentle, the way it was in movies and promising songs. So she enjoyed her time, and she enjoyed it because he was kind to her. He was nice to her, and she got to have her own um, autonomy, her own ability to make her own decisions, choose who she wanted to be with, and choose who she wanted to reject, and living her life. Okay. And so this is the story of the patriarchy. This story about Arnold's friend coming in and saying, no, you are not in control of yourself. You do not have your own autonomy. And so he comes in to break her, to break the girl, okay, to enforce the patriarchy and the male dominance. Patriarchy is a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it, okay? The patriarchy, it's like systemic racism, okay? Not all white people are racist, and not all white people support systemic racism. Same thing with the patriarchy. Not all men are patriarchal. Not all men support the patriarchy. I mean, we go back, Eddie. Apparently, Eddie was really kind to her, and he respected her. He was kind to her. He was gentle. He was sweet. The boy that she rejected, he didn't lash out and be like, "You bitch, you slut, you prick tease." He didn't say those kind of things. He was fine. He said, I mean, as far as we know, he was okay. She said no. He moved on. Okay. But then you have people though like Arnold Friend who are going to enforce themselves. And that's the patriarchy. The patriarchy is a type of system like racism, where you will have people who are enforcing their power over those who they feel are subjects to them. Okay? Patriarchy wishes to break women, just like how cowboys break mares. In general, this is a description about how to tame a horse. In general, a mare's loyalty greatly depends on the type of training or breaking that it receives. Horses that are broken to follow their leader out of respect are much more enjoyable than those that follow out of fear. Follow these tips to build a bond of trust with your horse as you break it. Wow, that's harsh language. And that is also the same mentality of the patriarchy. Okay. Uh, Margaret Mead's book, The Handmaid's Tale, the patriarchy. Break the spirit, break the sense of independence, and then you have them under your control. So she, at the same moment that she rejected the other boy, she was looking around, choosing her partner. She drew her shoulders up and sucked in her breath with the pure pleasure of being alive. And just at that moment, just at the moment that she was having that moment of pure pleasure of making her own decisions, she happened to glance at a face just a few feet from hers. It was a boy with shaggy black hair in a convertible jalopy painted gold. He stared at her, and then his lips widened into a grin. He wagged a finger and laughed and said, "Gonna get you, baby." He is the spirit of the patriarchy. After a while, she could hear again. She was sitting on the floor with her wet back against the wall. Arnold Friend was saying from the door, "That's a good girl. Put the phone back." She kicked the phone away from her. "No, honey, pick it up. Put it back right." She picked it up and put it back. The dial tone stopped. "That's a good girl. Now you come outside." She was hollow with what had been fear, but what was now just an emptiness. As soon as she expressed any sense of free will, he was there to put her in her place. And he says, "I'm going to get you, baby." He is the spirit of male dominance. And then he arrives at her home. He goes through this long process, and he finally is able to break that inner spirit of her, where he totally has her under control. And she's just left with emptiness. Women who succumb to the patriarchy are filled with emptiness, just like slaves when they were broken and they succumbed to slavery and they accepted it, they were filled with emptiness. Just like people of color under Jim Crow and they succumbed to it and they accepted it, they were filled with emptiness. Racism, sexism, homophobia, all these things, xenophobia, are meant to create a sense of emptiness within the people that they discriminate against. And it's a way to control them. It says, "I ain't made plans for coming to that house where I don't belong, but just for you to come out to me the way you should. Don't you know who I am?" He's demanding that she comes to him. She was panting. The kitchen looked like a place she had never seen before, some room she had run inside, but that wasn't good enough. It wasn't going to help her. The kitchen window had never had a curtain. After 3 years, and there were dishes in the sink for her to do, probably, and if you ran your hand across the table, you'd probably feel something sticky there. It's not by accident that Joyce Carol Oates has the last room that she's in her house is the kitchen, because that is symbolic of the place of women, the kitchen. She'd never seen the kitchen like this before because she was a child and she was just there to get food and whatever. But now she sees it as in this is her dungeon. This is her role. This is where society, the patriarchy, wants her to be. This place, these dishes, this stickiness, this table. And that is what she is regulated to. It becomes something new for her, okay? Which is not good. It's her prison. It's her hell. It's her punishment for being a woman. Okay. Arnold Friend said in a gentle, loud voice that was like a stage voice, "The place where you came from ain't there anymore, and where you had in mind to go is canceled out." Meaning that safe home that you were in that you enjoyed is done because you're no longer a child. And that idea now that you're becoming an adult, this place of like independence and autonomy and your place to make your own self decisions, all this that's canceled out. That's out because you're a woman. No, that's this place that you are now inside your daddy's house is nothing but a cardboard box I can knock down anytime. You know that, and I always did know it. You hear me? Now put your hand on your heart, honey. Feel that? That feels solid too, but we know better. Be nice to me. Be sweet like you can, because what else is there for a girl like you but to be sweet and pretty and give in and get away before her people come back? He's telling her exactly how she needs to be. She needs to be the sweet, kind, obedient housewife. This is your role. Fine. Or be the sweet, kind, obedient secretary. This is where you are. Okay? Any other type of goals or ambitions or anything else you have? Nope. President? Ah! Yeah, right. Okay, no. My sweet little blue-eyed girl, he said in a half-sung sigh that had nothing to do with her brown eyes, but it was taken up just the same by the vast sunlit riches of the land behind him and on all sides of him. He doesn't really see her because the patriarchy doesn't really see women individually. They're just a tool to be used. So we have Satyr. Okay, Arnold Friend's a Satyr. But then we also have imagery of the devil, because the Satyr in Greek literature eventually evolves into devil imagery in Christianity. So the patriarchy is the devil's work. Okay, that's where we're getting with sort of Joyce Carol Oates' theme here. Arnold Friend. So this idea that Arnold Friend is not just a Satyr but also a devil is supported in the fact that the R's out of his name, then we have the title, an old fiend. And a fiend is an evil spirit or demon. Okay, he's demonic. The patriarchy, sexism is demonic. It's not right. And then there's even a line that says he's old as the devil. He wasn't a kid. He was much older. He had come from nowhere before that had belonged nowhere. As if he were smiling from inside a mask. His whole face was a mask, she thought wildly, tanned down to his throat, but then running out as if he had plastered makeup on his face, but had forgotten about his throat. Man, the flying saucers. It was an expression kids had used the year before, but they didn't use this year. He said in a rapid, meaningless voice, as if he were running through all the expressions he'd learned, but was no longer sure which of them was in style, then rushing on to new ones, making them up with his eyes closed. He says, I know everybody, and I know what your family's doing right now. Arnold Friend is the devil. Devil, or being as old as the devil, is the patriarchy. The patriarchy has been around as long as men have been on Earth. Okay, and he is his age, his old age is evident in all these different types of descriptions of him. He wasn't a kid, but because he was much older, he knew all these expressions because he had been spending his whole entire existence, all these thousands of years, getting young teenage girls under the control. But he's also kind of like an incubus vampire. Again, just building on more and more demonic and imagery and what's that word I'm looking for? Not violent, but like they're just hunting. An incubus is a demon in male form who, according to mythological and legendary traditions, lies upon sleeping women in order to engage in sexual activity with them, much like a satyr, okay? In order to enter any house owned by humans, witches, werewolves, or doppelgangers, vampires, or hybrids must be invited by the owners of the home. Once invited, the vampire cannot be uninvited unless the ownership of the house changes. So Arnold friend even says, honey, listen, here's how it is. I always tell the truth, and I promise you this, I ain't coming in that house after you. He's not coming in. He has to be invited because he is this incubus. He is this demon that's going to suck her life from her. On his car, if you remember, there's a secret code, 33, 19, and 17. That's easy enough to pass by, but it's actually the key to the title of the story. The 33rd book in reverse from the Old Testament is Judges. Chapter 19, verse 17 reads, when he looked and saw the traveler in the city square, the old man asked, where are you going? Where have you been? Which is the title of our story. The story occurs in the days when Israel had no king, and they had turned from God, a Levite. A Levite goes to Bethlehem to get a concubine, which is a sex slave, who left him and returned home to her father. After spending 6 days and nights with the girl's father, the Levite, the concubine, and a servant set out to return home. As dusk approached, they entered Gibeah and sat in the town square waiting for someone to offer them a place to stay. This is when the old man approaches and asks the Levite the question, where are you going and where have you been? While at the old man's house, a group of Israelites come to the door and demand that the old man send the Levite out to them so they can beat him. The old man refuses and offers his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to this group, this gang of men. The Levite sends his concubine outside, and the men rape and abuse her all night. She collapses at the door, and in the morning, the Levite finds her and tells her to get up. When he realizes she is deceased, the man places her on his donkey and returns home. When he arrives home, he takes out his knife and cuts the concubine into 12 parts, sending the parts of the tribes to the tribes of Israel. Wow. A lot of violence done to women. So why 33 books backwards? 33 equals Jesus' age when he died. 33 is a classic symbol for Jesus. But Jesus is a savior in the mythology, if you believe that. So if we go backwards, okay, if it's 33 books backwards, well, backwards as an adjective usually means like that's not the right way. Like that's backwards. That's a backwards way of doing things. And backwards is not good. It generally means the opposite. So the opposite of Jesus is the Antichrist or the devil. So again, it reinforces this idea that Arnold Friend and this type of behavior towards women is the devil's doing. Now, in the story, this from chapter 19, verse 17, or the inverse, who does wrong to the women in the story? Well, we have the Levite, the concubine's father, the old man, and the Israelites. I mean, the Levite, the father, the old man, they all send out the women to the Israelites. And the Israelites rape and abuse them. So what do all four of those have in common? Well, they're all men looking out for each other. So the analysis of 33 indicates that who is behind these actions towards women? The devil, Antichrist. And who is the devil's weapon against women? Men. Not all men, okay? Just like not all white people were racists. Not all Americans are anti-immigrants. Not all straight people are against gay people. So, you know, one or some or a group of a whole doesn't represent the entire whole, okay? So there are plenty of men who are very supportive of women, but there's also a large group of men who come together in order to enforce violence, whether that's social violence or physical violence against women. All right, so in terms of theme, she drew her shoulders up and sucked in her breath with the pure pleasure of being alive. A sacred building that loomed up out of the night to give them what haven and blessing they yearned for. This is the pizza place. I mean the burger joint. But while she's having this moment of pure pleasure of being alive, Arnold friend wags a finger and laughs and says, "Gonna get you, baby." Okay, so we have this idea that like women, they're just minding their own business. They're just minding, Connie's just minding her own business. She's enjoying her life. Okay, and this man, Arnold friend, he enforces himself upon her life. Okay, she is not going to him. She's just living her life, minding her own business, and then he comes up out of nowhere to then enforce himself upon her. A couple of years ago, there was a tweet put out there asking what women would do at night if there were no men on streets. And these are some of the replies. I would go to a cafe and actually read without numerous strangers sitting at my table and chatting me up. I just want to drink my cup and read a book because I stay indoors too much and I need to get out a little. Oh my God, the mind reels. Go dancing, take a walk, open the front door without fear, sit on the beach at night. I'd run at night. Actually walk to places I wanted to go without horns and hearing things about my anatomy shouted from a car window. Shop in peace. Go out for a drink because I really want to have a drink and actually watch the band. I'd go to the bathroom without worrying that someone was drugging my drink. I'd go out dancing without worrying about someone sticking their hand up my dress. I'd play pinball without worrying that someone was going to grab my ass. For me, the saddest part about all this is teaching my daughter to constantly second guess her actions. Don't put your drink down and walk away. Don't go to the bathroom alone if it's near an exit. I love you in that skirt too, but it's not a good idea to wear it. Me, I'd walk everywhere. I'd grocery shop late at night when it's quiet. I'd take public transit all the time and I could sell my car. I wouldn't worry about my girlfriends when we were out listening to music, etc. Okay. Absolutely absolute freedom to do whatever I want, walk around the city, return from work or party at any time without fear. Won't be watching my back. Go to the club and dance with my girls without getting sweat on by a strange man. I could walk back from the library without at least three friends, mace in one hand, flashlight in another, whistle in another hand, keys in another hand, and a phone in another. Oh, she's run out of hands. Okay. So, the story talks about like the existential danger that men cause women and the patriarchy, the patriarchal violence that is enacted on women. Financially, women still make a whole lot less money than men. There are fewer women in executive positions. Education alone, there's like 75% teachers are female, but only like 30% of administrators are female. It's a problem, okay? Because administrators make more money and they have more power. Why is it that there are tons of women who can teach, but they're not given these, they're not being promoted? So this is a problem. But like this story though, I want to emphasize that like Connie is not being punished for having sex. She's not being punished for being sexually active, which is what a lot of people want to do. A lot of people want to slut shame women. They want to say things like, look, if you don't want your ass grabbed, don't wear a short skirt. Okay. If you don't want guys commenting on your body, then don't wear skimpy stuff. If you don't want to have sex with a guy, then don't kiss him. Don't make out with him. Okay. All these things are always like put on women. That is like their fault for these things. Okay. And this is a story about the importance of consent, not sin, not this idea that like she is deserving of this punishment. Because we go back to this. One night in midsummer, they ran across, breathless with daring, and right away someone leaned out a car window and invited them over to the car. hey, come to my car, let's make out. But it was just a boy from high school, and they didn't like it. They didn't like it. It made them feel good to be able to ignore him. And the boy was fine. But Eddie, she chose. Eddie, her thing. That's great. And then afterwards, she was thinking about how nice he was, how kind he was, how gentle he was. Okay. And so, she was deserving of that. But Arnold's friend abuses her. He violates her. He thinks that he's entitled to just because she slept with Eddie. Okay. Or we don't even know if they even like had sex. They just made out, whatever. Then Arnold thinks that he's entitled to it, which is absolutely incorrect. Okay. That type of thinking is demonic. Okay. It's violent. It's evil. Everything about Eddie we should assume to be evil because he's associated and symbolized with demonic imagery. Uh, the satyr, the goat, these types of things. And so Connie is victimized just because she is a woman, okay, a young woman. And patriarchy won't even let her establish her own autonomy yet before it comes in and tries to put her in a place. Okay. All right, that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Joyce Carol Oates put a lot of thought into writing this, and it's very layered. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Okay, bye bye.